Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the session. I'm very, very excited to introduce a phenomenal entrepreneur. She is the CEO of Digital Undivided. She is an author. She's a writer of The Path Redefined. She's an advisor. She was the first Black woman to start a VC fund in the US. Lauren Millian, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Valentina. It is so good to see you.
So good to see you again. Lauren, I wanted to start by stating the obvious. We've been going through one of the most stressful, difficult, challenging years in recent history. We had coronavirus, we had Black Lives Matter, one of the most important movements in the last century, I would say. We had, you recently had the elections in the US. I mean, what a year. And diversity has been at the core and at the center of the conversation. How are you living this from the business landscape? Do you feel that that is translating into the startup world?
Yes, I think absolutely. Look, it's translating into every area of business. The conversation around diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging has been, a conversation that we've seen sprinkled around. And I think that we have experienced a moment which commanded more attention. Time will tell how much that attention has spread to other areas of business. But for certain, we see large corporations making bold statements. Those statements still need to be backed up with action to actually, be implemented and executed on, because that is the power of those statements. The power is not in the statement itself, but in the ability to actually execute on it.
Right. One of the key topics this year in the summit itself is how to build a brave new world, right? This is an opportunity for all of us. It's kind of like our entire surroundings are telling us, wake up, things need to change, right? And you have a very inspirational story of starting from nothing, starting at a very, very young age. You were only 19 when you started your first business. So how did you get that courage to just start off and fund a business?
I think with the younger you are, the more naive you are, the more fearless you are. You're inherently fearless, I think, as long as you lean into it. And I think that maybe I over-indexed in that fearlessness, but for me, it was always the feeling of self-belief, self-confidence, my own abilities, and knowing the power of being a self-starter, knowing the power of having a singular idea, actually being able to build and coalesce a vision around it, and then execute on it. And I started doing that at a young age with a lemonade stand, and then I added iced tea, and then this, and then that. And so I think, when you feel that kind of confidence in yourself, your ideas, your ability, you want to test it. And I tested it at a young age with something really small, a little lemonade stand that allowed me to prove out my concept. And I've been proving out concepts ever since. And I think they just get bigger and bolder and more complex along the way.
Wow. And I'm wondering, who was your role model? Who inspired you? Who taught you this idea that you can achieve whatever you set your mind to?
I think I don't know, my role models were other people around me that had the freedom to chart their own path, create their own future, own their own destiny. I think I saw many different models of that. My mother, my father, friends, Oprah. I think it's a mix of everything. It's like a mix of men, women, people around the world. I think I'm inspired by really specific parts of very different people in their ability to maintain autonomy while still driving success.
Right. And it takes a lot of confidence, right? You're starting a business, you're, getting yourself out there. Do you work on certain habits? Do you work on certain actions, readings, trainings to work on that confidence? Because it's like a muscle, right?
Yeah, I don't know that I know. I mean, I wrote a book on it that comes from my own personal experiences, but I think that a lot of what I do now in terms of giving back to women, to entrepreneurs, to innovators, to people with big, bold vision is a result of the support that I didn't have. So for me, it was constant trial and error. It was always learning on the job. It was always, iterating, constantly iterating on a new idea, a new vision, a new possibility.
Right.
A lot of trial and error.
Right, right. And it's what it comes down to, right? Accepting failure and trying again, because that is one of the hardest mindset tricks, right? When we fail at something, it's hard to regain that confidence to start over again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, you know, if I have to say anything, I think it's this is funny enough, but I always say it because it is how I feel. Growing up as a young girl, you know, I was always I was the only kid of color in my grade, in my school for 7 consecutive years. I went through a stage of wearing braces, braids, and glasses, and being skinny and being tall. So I think that for me, this idea of self-confidence came from having to remind myself of my own worthiness, my own beauty, my own strength, um, my own opportunities, my own possibilities, because growing up, it was everything but that around me. And I always had that drive, but it was supported by my own family. But out in school and out in the real world, I was still such a unicorn. And that was before being a unicorn was something cool.
Right, exactly. Um, the topic that brings us here now, right, is how to turn this being overlooked, this idea of being overlooked into an asset, right? Did you ever feel overlooked?
Of course, I felt overlooked my whole career. I think I think that's also what's interesting about this moment in time is that a lot of, business leaders who are people of color have felt overlooked for a long time. And now there's this big, bright, shining light saying, hey, pay more attention to this problem. It's been a problem, but now we want you to pay a different type of attention to it. And who's best qualified to actually step into those roles?
Right, right. How do you get from there to becoming a leader? You're a leader in several, I would say several sectors, right? So how do you start developing that vision and believing that you can become a leader? Because there's one thing to gain courage and start a business, and it's a whole other thing to step up to becoming a leader.
Yeah, I think that for me, leadership is the ability to continuously help people, help them grow, help them win, help them make money, help them succeed, help them turn around their businesses, help them pivot, help them scale. Um, and so long as I can keep doing that, I will. I think, the proof is always in the pudding. And so for me, even it's a constant evolution of doing it again and again and again. Now it's on to different industries, different teams, different locations, different size of teams, different company constructs. But I think that the principles are the same. The principles of identifying, deeply understanding, analyzing a problem, creating the solution, implementing the solution, creating teams, and sustaining where you do find success, where you do find and create efficiencies. That is like, I think, the global framework. And that global framework can change over time, again, depending on the type of business. And it can be nuanced based upon the moment in time. So I don't think that, the work I'm doing now is any different than the work I was doing before. The only difference is that there is more popularity around the conversation of the work that I'm doing now, because it's putting a spotlight on a particular issue, which has been here for a very long time. But now my job as a leader is to make sure that I'm capturing everyone's attention at this moment in time when the conversation is more popular than it has ever been before.
Right, right. And it leads us to a burning question that I had, because you work a lot with personal branding and you have these incredible courses. And it is a big factor today for success in entrepreneurship, right? What would you advise people in terms of building their brand? Our community, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs who are migrants, who are refugees, who have a very, very interesting story behind their path, right? So how would you advise them to kind of think about branding themselves and their story?
I say share your story. Always share your story. And I think that for those of us who have accomplished a lot, I hear all the time this feeling of imposter syndrome and, oh, but is it nice or appropriate for me to share and say all of my accolades? Does it sound too much? Does it sound boastful? If you put it in the context of your life, and if you have a really compelling life story, if you've overcome trials, tribulations, difficulties, unexpected moments, tragedy, these things create character. They create who you are. And they send other signals, different types of signals to someone versus your accomplishments, your achievements, press, or recognition alone. So when you can couple that with the substance of who you are and how you show up in the world, your personal brand can do incredible things for your career and your business. And that's when it serves as a launch pad for who you are and what you can become, is when you're able to harness the power of your own personal story within the context of your professional achievements.
Mm-hmm. Are there contexts in which you think it is not relevant to share the personal story? Because sometimes entrepreneurs, when pitching to investors, may think they shouldn't care about this. This is not relevant. Do you think that's something to highlight in every context?
I think I say yes, with the caveat that, that's a broad question, right? So some things are too much. And I think knowing when too much is really key. No one needs to know your entire life story. Even when someone says it's an open door conversation, that doesn't mean that it's therapy. Know the boundaries, work within them, and make sure that no one needs to remind you of what they are. I think that's the worst place to be, where you share too much, you're oversharing, and you put yourself in a position for someone to remind you that you're saying and sharing too much. So always be mindful, always be professional, but make correlations between your personal experiences and your professional pursuits, your professional values, your professional accolades, when and how you see fit. I dive into all of this in my course at straightupandsuccessful.com, but for purposes of this conversation, yes, try to tie in, your personal experiences as best as you can, but always make sure it's relevant. If it's not relevant and it's not timely, leave it alone.
Right. What is the first step that you would advise an entrepreneur to take? Is it having presence online? Is it having a website? What is the first step that you think they should take?
Yes, I think everyone needs to have a presence online, especially right now. I think LinkedIn, having your own blogs. I am a big believer in owning and having control over your own media destination. So if that's, your blog, your own website, what have you, not relying on third parties, social media is wonderful. Make sure that you are cross-promoting, cross-sharing, and utilizing that same information even on your owned channels. I think that that's very, very important. In making sure that you have a place somewhere online that you own that's easily accessible, that can serve as a repository on information and updates around you, your business, your brand, and your career.
Right. Right. A lot of people watching us as well right now haven't started. They want to start, but they haven't started a business, right? And we're in this moment where if you're looking for an excuse, you'll find it. We have coronavirus, we have recession. Would you advise an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur to start today?
Absolutely. I think there's nothing more that any of us could lose. And I think the biggest and best businesses are created in downturns, in times of uncertainty, in times of limited resources, in times of limited accessibility to people, to product. If you can build something now, if you have an idea, this is also a great time to find talent who's likely available or interested in trying something new, even if they're not available. So I encourage all entrepreneurs to build now and invest now, especially in a downturn, if you have the ability to do so.
Right, right. Where do you get this sort of positive and optimistic overview?
It beats being pessimistic. For sure. I try to approach every day. I try to approach every day with this feeling. And there's so much that we do control, even when we think that there is so much that's not within our control. So, the world is going on outside of the four walls that we are each within right now. I'm here in New York City. You're in Amsterdam. People are watching from all over the world. And while the world might be crumbling around us, what we do control is what we do with our time, how we value our time, where we spend our energy, what we want to create, how we want to partner, how we treat people within our walls, our ecosystem, our networks, our orbits. And that's what's most important to me, are the things that I can control. I can't control a variety of other things that are going on in the world that I don't even have immediate access to. And I'm not going to try, because it's a waste of my energy. And I think when we realize what's a waste of our energy versus where our energy is best spent, I think we can wake up with a more positive attitude every day about the things that we are capable of changing.
Right. I love that. I love that. Are you seeing certain industries, certain sectors that are promising that we should be looking at? There's a lot more focus today because we are locked at home or in lockdown. There's a lot of focus in human connection, human relationships. I noticed like a rebirth of that, right? Are you noticing certain areas and sectors that could have a promising future and could create lasting change?
Yes, I think, look, we're seeing a lot of that in education. We're finding, you know, that there needs to be a more dynamic way to educate, to inspire, to connect, to create morale, to have fun safely, to engage in activities safely. Absolutely. But I'm also seeing the return of old school connectivity. I pick up the phone all the time. It's something I've always been doing. And now I'm asking people, look, let's have a call. Zoom is great, but so are telephone calls as opposed to text and emails and Slacks. So are outdoor safe activities. You know, old school team building still works. Still works. You know, throwing a ball and catching in a park if you can, socially distance with your mask on, still works. It's still a really effective way to build morale and to connect people. And I think we're seeing a return to a lot of those simple things. And I think that it's nice to have that reset back to what's simple, what's important, and again, what we can control.
Definitely, definitely. We're nearing the end of the year, a very chaotic year, if anything. Um, how are you thinking about finishing this 2020 strong? And how would you advise entrepreneurs, especially women entrepreneurs, to finish 2020 strong?
Mm. Believe in yourself. Take absolutely every single risk you want to take, as so long as it doesn't scare you. You know, if there's something that you believe in that other people doubt, take the risk, do it. Might be the best business decision that you've ever made, might make you tons of money, might take your career in a completely different direction. You know, this is the time for the innovators, the idea creators, to stand up and to push forward. So be confident in that, be confident in the uncertainty that this moment provides, and learning and seeing that this uncertainty is what really creates all of the opportunity, because no one has the answer in this moment. And when no one has the answer, that means that the answer is up for you to be able to grab and own. And that's wonderful to be able to own, you know, a new solution, a new idea, a new approach, to birth a new business that nobody's thinking of. Now is the time, especially for entrepreneurs and innovators who are constantly thinking about, you know, creating solutions to something that already exists. We've seen a ton of problems that no one ever anticipated being created out of this pandemic, out of social distancing, out of everybody working from home, including kids homeschooling. You know, there's all sorts of issues. There's a food issue. There's a what to eat and how quickly you can cook it issue. There's tech issues and non-tech issues. There's lifestyle issues. There's health issues. There are sanitary issues. I mean, there are so many things that are up for grabs right now and ripe for disruption. And no one has the answer. So no idea could be too silly, too small, too stupid. None of that. Like, none of that is true. Again, because nobody has the answer and everyone's curious. And this is also the time when, because no one has the answer, you will find that investors and companies are more willing to make investments in the unknown, because they are still searching for the answer themselves.
Right, right. I love this because this idea that we can come up with the answers and we can find the solutions, we can innovate, right, and create something new is something that we explore a lot within Startups Without Borders, especially the idea that by bringing minds that think differently, we can create new solutions to problems that we were not seeing before, right? Mm-hmm. With your work at Digital Undivided, how do you pitch these kind of things? What is your vision on the importance of diversity, not from a social standpoint, but from a purely economical standpoint?
Yeah, you know, I think, I'm sorry, Valentina. Oh, it's 11. I have a call. That's why somebody's calling me. Ay. Sorry. Can you re-ask the question? I apologize.
Yeah. So this idea that bringing the answers can come from ourselves because we're seeing problems we were not seeing before, mm-hmm. is really supports the idea, that the diversity and the bringing minds that think differently together can lead to more innovative businesses, more innovative ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is your vision at Digital Undivided on diversity when we talk about it, not from a social standpoint, but more from an economic standpoint, from a profit standpoint as well?
Yeah, I think diversity is always good for business. And we see that especially around marketing, communications, product development, user experience, user interface. If you have a company that's got a wonderful product, but the marketing falls flat, the marketing is not inclusive, not diverse, it creates a problem for brands. And that problem for brands, that storytelling, that marketing, that communications issue touches their bottom line, impacts their bottom line and their profitability because people choose to shop elsewhere or use different products. We see that happening often. And I think that the biggest call to action right now is that diversity is good for business, that diversity leads to more revenue, greater profit margins, greater visibility, greater customer loyalty, all the things that are important. But that diversity is not just, in advertisements and glossies and awesome things on social media and videos and promotions. No, it has to come from within. It has to come from leadership teams, executive teams that are as diverse as well to represent, to be an accurate reflection of the real world. The real world is not, a singular culture or ethnicity or background or gender, and making sure that there is a wide breadth and depth of diversity at leadership tables is absolutely good for business. And it's good to understand deeply and uniquely who your customers are, and to understand that furthermore, every business is global right now. Even if they are operating in one geography, you're touching digital, you're online, you're global. So think not just twice, but 3 times about who's a part of that conversation, who's helping you create that vision.
Right. And you're supporting diverse founders from very different kinds of standpoints, right? On the one hand, women who are very severely underfunded when it comes to startup funding, but also minorities, right? And I think this is the last question and we can close it from here, but what would be your advice, right, to a young woman that wants to start, that wants to get into, the venture capital scene? What would be your advice to her?
My advice is again, take the risk, go forth unafraid, start making small bets where you can. Get close to the companies that you're interested in. If you have the ability to make the investments, start making them. And if you don't have the ability to make the investments, invest your time and your talent. Maybe offer to be an advisor, find another way to get on the cap table, find another way to become a part of the company's future. And to realize that you have several ways to make an investment. You can make an investment of your time, your talent, or your treasure being your capital. And all of it matters, and all of it is a wonderful starting point.
I love it. Thank you so much, Lauren. It was such a pleasure speaking to you today.
Thank you. So good to see you, Valentina. Thank you for the invitation. And thank you to all of you, Startup Without Borders, for having me. And remember, startups have no borders, and your life shouldn't either. So keep going, keep going, keep going. I'm excited to hopefully be there with you all next year in person, and hopefully we're in a different place in the world with a lot more diversity.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much again.
Okay, thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.